Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margo and Sonia Mansfield talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Lately, one of the most exciting privately held companies in Silicon Valley has come under fire. I'm talking about Theranos. That's the diagnostics company with the ultra-fast finger prick blood testing technology that's aiming to upend the entire traditional healthcare establishment by making it easier, less expensive, and much less uncomfortable for you to get tested for a whole range of conditions. For the last few years, Theranos has been viewed as a revolutionary company. Its CEO has been heralded as next Steve Jobs. The company's been valued as much as $9 billion in its most recent round of fundraising. But Theranos also has its critics, and just this morning, the Wall Street Journal ran a pretty scathing article about the company, alleging that the company's proprietary testing devices may be inaccurate, and basically accusing Theranos of deceptive practices. The journal cites a former employee who claimed that of the 240 tests offered by Theranos, only 15 are actually performed on the company's proprietary Edison diagnostic machine, vast majority of the rest being done on traditional lab equipment. The article was pretty brutal. But here on Mad Money, we know something. We know that there are two sides to every single story, which is why I think it's important that we speak to Elizabeth Holmes, the founder and CEO of Theranos, who's coming to us this afternoon from Boston, where she's attending a meeting of the Board of Fellows at Harvard Medical School, to give her a chance to answer the charges raised in the article. Ms. Holmes, welcome back to Mad Money.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth, I have to tell you, in all my years, I can't recall a private company that I have to candidly, many have never heard of, getting this kind of attention and scrutiny. What do you think's going on here?
This is what happens when you work to change things. And first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world. And I have to say, I personally was shocked to see that the journal would publish something like this when we had sent them over 1,000 pages of documentation demonstrating that the statements in their piece were false, but we're doing things differently, and we're working to make a difference.
Welcome back to the What a Creep podcast. Sonia, we're on episode 3 now.
I can't believe we're on 3 already.
It's going by so fast. I'm having so much fun.
I am too. It's so fun.
So let me ask you, what do you know about Elizabeth Holmes?
I have seen the documentary on HBO. That's
okay.
it.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to talk about her today. And I guess I should tell the audience, you're based in San Francisco.
Yes.
I'm based in New York, but I used to live in the Bay Area. So every once in a while, I get a little Bay Area specific. It's just because I enjoyed talking to someone that also knows what I'm talking about in the Bay Area. But you guys are familiar with Silicon Valley. You have to be, right?
Yeah. And they must be, not just the TV show, but, you know, the tech,
right.
All these apps, they're all taking over the world. And Elizabeth Holmes is actually pretty representative of a lot of the things that are kind of going wrong for San Francisco right now. So I'm really excited to hear what you have to say.
Well, I did a bunch of research as usual. So my main sources are the book called Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup by John Carreyrou, and he was also the reporter at Wall Street Journal. He's amazing. There's the Inventor documentary that you just mentioned by Alex Gibney. I have these glowing articles from Forbes, Inc., and The New Yorker. All the reporters for them have since been chagrined by this.
Oops.
There's two amazing podcasts I want to give a shout out to. The Dropout, which is a podcast from ABC, and the reporter's Rebecca Jarvis. And then there's a show, I don't know if you've heard of this, it's called Behind the Bastards.
Oh, no.
And it's a show about bastards, like really, really awful people. And the host is Robert Evans, but not that Robert Evans.
Okay.
Not the kid stays in the picture. I kind of wish it was, only because I like listening to him talk, but Robert Evans' the show is great too, and he did an episode about this. So anyway, those are my main sources, and we're talking about Elizabeth Holmes, and she kind of is a creep to me, like Lance Armstrong is a creep from our first episode, because she sued people who were telling the truth.
Right. Which is like the creepiest thing. It's such a fucking douchebag thing to do.
She's a major douchebag.
Yeah.
I never called a woman a douchebag before, but
I would
there
say
you
that
go.
she's definitely a douchebag, and I hope you're going to take out your impression of her for this as well, right?
Yes, I've got it. By the way, I have to take a sip of water, but yes, I've got it all
Okay.
in the get-go.
Yeah. And then
I
we
am-
should mention that
Yeah.
we'll end the episode with someone who's not a creep. So,
Yes, just to sweeten it, you guys, because we don't want to completely bum you out. It's more supposed to be like therapeutic. You know, we get
Yeah.
this out of the system, and then boom. All right. So are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So Elizabeth Holmes was born February 3rd, 1984, in Washington D.C. Mother Christian Holmes held several jobs. One notable one being that he was a vice president at Enron. Also, there was a documentary about Enron directed by Alex Gibney. This asshole world all just kind of comes together.
It's full circle already. It's a circle of life. Okay.
Will the circle be unbroken? Yeah, we're just going to sing to you. Okay. He was also on several governmental committees such as USAID, the EPA, and USTDA. Her mother, Noelle, worked as a congressional committee staffer, and she has a younger brother named Christian, whom she's often described as her best friend. Yeah. So Elizabeth's great-grandmother was the daughter of Charles Fleischmann, and he was the founder of Fleischmann's Yeast.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm a
it
big
was-
fan. Big fan.
Are you really?
Oh, yeah.
My mom used to bake bread when I was a kid. Like that was like a thing in the 70s.
I
like
bake bread as well.
Yeah. Well, not as many people do anymore. So we'll talk about that in a
Yeah.
second. So her great-grandmother was daughter of Charles Fleischmann. Her husband was a doctor who went on to establish Cincinnati General Hospital and the University of Cincinnati Hospital. So by the way, one of the investors claimed having this in her past, Charles Fleischmann being an entrepreneur and her other grandfather being a doctor, made her a natural run a medical testing company, which is absurd.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
You could totally inherit that sort of thing. Yes.
My great-grandfather was a fireman in New York City. I do not know how to put out a fire. I can barely operate a fire extinguisher.
I think you just
Word to the
haven't
wise.
you just haven't had the opportunity, Margo. I think if it really happened, you'd be surprised.
It would kick in. Okay. Well, the Fleischmanns were very wealthy for a time, but most of that wealth was gone by the time Elizabeth's parents were together and having a family. And I was just put a note here, not as many people make their own bread anymore. They certainly don't do like adding yeast and letting it rise and all that stuff. I mean, we're just much more of a convenience culture. All right. So in general about her past, Elizabeth paints herself as a shy and very studious kid. And there are people who knew her as a child who are talking about her now because everybody's talking about her now. And one of them is a man named David Fuse. And he is a psychiatrist and a former CIA agent.
Oh.
And he was friends with Elizabeth's parents. And he claims that her parents envied his wealth and envied the wealth of everybody in D.C. And they pushed Elizabeth academically. I should also tell you that later on, he tried to create a patent that would compete with Theranos, and they wound up suing each other. So he's got a little bit of a
he's got a history.
Dog in this race. Yes. But anyway, supposedly when she found out that they were moving to Houston from D.C., Elizabeth at age 7 wrote her father a letter telling him she was excited to move to there because science was big in Texas, and she was excited to create something new in the world.
Aw, that's cute.
Sorry, that's my paper. So she also claims that she created a time machine when she was young, that she drew one. And then she also said at the age of 10, she read Moby Dick. And I kind of call bullshit here. Because I always think people are just lying when they brag about what they read when they were super young.
Right.
And I'm trying to think of, what's the Jamie Lee Curtis film? A Fish Called Wanda.
Yes.
There's a great scene where she tells her boyfriend, she calls him Ape, Kevin Kline.
I know exactly.
And he says, apes don't read poetry. And she says, yes, they do. They just don't understand them. And that's how I feel when people tell me they've read Moby Dick and the Greek classics. I'm like, it doesn't mean you understand them.
I love that she thinks she built a time machine.
Well, she was trying to create one.
Like that's something to brag about. At 10, I totally drew a time machine. Good for you. I drew a rainbow and a unicorn. It doesn't mean I invented them.
This is all of her myth building. Like,
Yes.
this is why Elizabeth is special. Elizabeth is different.
Mm-hmm.
So when she was young, she stated she wanted to be a doctor when she grew up. So her parents hooked her up to watch a surgery because you could do that sometimes.
Ew.
And out went that idea. She saw the blood and everything, and she
Yeah,
said, no,
gross.
thank you. And she claims that after that, she obsessed over blood and needles. And anytime she knew she would have a doctor's appointment, she would like obsess about it for weeks. Another story about her is that she understood from a young age that her family used to have money, but now her parents had to work really hard for all the niceties. Or I wrote here, or what upper middle class people think is hard work. But,
Right.
in general, she knew they used to be wealthy. They're not anymore. So
You know
that
what?
was, it was something
Our
we talked
second home isn't as nice as our first home. We had to really struggle.
Well, I knew the difference between me and other kids. Like when we went on vacation, I don't know about you, but like we got in a car, drove
Yeah.
like everywhere.
Yeah. And we
And
slept in the
it was
car,
like they
by the
flew-
way.
Yeah. And then I had friends who like flew places. Like, wow, really?
Yeah.
Like that just seemed so extravagant to me.
You stayed in a hotel? What are you, made of money?
Whoa, not a motel, a hotel?
Damn.
So when asked by a relative what she wanted to be when she grew up, a young Elizabeth Holmes said, a billionaire. And they said, why not the president? She says, well, because I'll be rich and the president will want to marry me, which I get that logic. In high school, she had a big interest in computers and learning Mandarin. Her father traveled to China quite a bit and thought it'd be good for his kids to learn it. And in the summers, she would attend Stanford University's summer Mandarin program. And she claims that she would call them nonstop throughout the school year, begging them to accept her because normally it was just meant for college kids.
Mm-hmm.
And she finally talked them into it. So she was speaking Mandarin at this time.
And reading Moby Dick in Mandarin, I assume.
She probably did.
I know. But she didn't understand
But she didn't understand it, Otto. Okay. So this may have been her side doorway of getting into the university. Stanford was a big deal. That was where she wanted to go. So in 2001, she entered Stanford University as a freshman, where she studied chemical engineering. And she was a normal college student, described at the time. She had a boyfriend her freshman year. She liked to go to the parties. She loved Northern California. And the summer after her freshman year, she participated in a program at the Genome Institute in Singapore. And she basically tested blood samples with syringes. And supposedly she was being teased by the other girls there. And a man came to her rescue. And his name was Sunny Balwani. He was 19 years older than her at the time and married. And Sunny had some big wins in the internet world. And I don't know if you remember, but in the late 90s, there was this big internet boom and then a bust.
Yes.
He made money just before the bust, and he made like 40, 50 million. Sunny likes fancy sports cars, like Lamborghinis with vanity plates, and he's studying to get his master's in business administration at Berkeley. He divorces his wife, and he and Elizabeth start dating in 2003.
Ew.
She is 19, and he is 38.
Gross. Gross.
They move in together in 2005. And at first, Elizabeth's parents were concerned about this relationship. But after he treated them to trips to Aspen and Paris, they were pretty much okay with him.
Right. Of course.
Right.
But the fact that he's obsessed with Lamborghinis makes me think his penis doesn't work, just FYI. So
He's also not very tall and not very attractive. So
he's got that going for him. He's the whole package, you guys.
He's the whole package. There's honestly these people. We'll get to the reveal. I mean, when you're told that they're together, like I can't picture them holding hands, much less making out, much less being together. Like I find no sexual chemistry between them. But who knows what puts people together?
That's true.
So in 2003, she files her first patent. It's for a wearable drug patch. And she supposedly stayed up 5 days straight to write this. And I keep writing supposedly because this woman lies like a rug.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to know what's true and what's not true. And she approaches, and I love this from the documentary, she approaches Dr. Phyllis Gardner at Stanford. And Phyllis Gardner had been there since the 80s. And if you see pictures of her, she was a really cute, hot chick. And now she's a super sharp lady. And a lot of kids go to her for advice. At Stanford, she knows a lot about medicine. She knows about putting businesses together. And she gets excited. She meets with Phyllis Gardner, and Phyllis said, yeah, this is not going to work. The skin is a terrible place to place a patch, anyway. It'll just fall off. It's just impossible. It's physically not possible. And Elizabeth just sort of said, okay. And then she tried